was our diversification, which was ice cream and visitor attraction. And I mean, the farm obviously goes back long before that. But recently we've moved into cheese making, and there's a reason for that. Is that ice cream is lovely. Everybody, well, most people like ice cream, but it has a lot of issues with it. It's energy intensive. It brings stuff from all over the world, which is really not good. It's high in sugar, high in fat. So it's got all kinds of things wrong with it. But yeah, it's very. We don't have it in the house unless we've got visitors. Yep, that's when we're allowed to have it in the house.
In the house briefly.
We just eat it. So ice cream is great, but the other problem with ice cream is it doesn't travel well. So it's got to go through a very controlled set of distributors and retailers, temperature controlled, -18 or lower, which is very energy intensive, but also means that you're very restricted to where you can go and who's going to take you. And if your customers who are of course aren't the final customer might want your ice cream, but so often we find that the intermediaries, whether it's a distributor or a retailer, suddenly decides, no, we don't want your product anymore for whatever reason, then that's it. You can't get to your customer anymore, and you can't communicate with the customer because the chain is so long and fragile. So we've always had major issues with that. Why we brought you here to tell you that, well, become obvious. So we've moved into the cheese side. The cheese side is a different company. Again, we've set up as a different company because it's a whole different character of a product, of a business. It's serious, and it's about serious issues and a serious product. And it's, I was going to say serious expensive, but obviously it's quality reflected in the. So the thing about the cheese is we're selling it under the brand name The Ethical Dairy, and of course we've got a lot of stake for that. Who do we think we are? How can you call yourselves ethical? Who defines ethical anyway? That's one for you, of course. Maybe you can answer that when we've got to the explaining. So and really the ethical side, we fought this for 6 months, didn't we, Lorna? We were very reluctant. Lorna's very good at words and stuff like that. And she said, well, you're doing all these things ethically, environmental, social, animal welfare, but nobody knows because it's so hard to get the story out there with all the noise. So unless you headline it and make a big thing about it, even if it just raises people's hackles, at least they'll ask the question, what makes them think they're ethical? And that's really the background to The Ethical Dairy. So we'll explain why we think we might be ethical as we go around. So the first is the woodlands. We've planted over the last 20 years, we've planted 75 acres of mixed broadleaf woodlands on the farms. There's a lot of Scots pine here. That was the first commission made us do that. It's not even worth explaining what it was about, but it was ridiculous. It was to hide the tracks or something. Was it? Do you remember that? So they said we had to plant Scots pine to hide the track. Anyway, there's a pile of Scots pine there, but apart from that, it's mixed broadleaf. And there's 75 acres of that. And the reason we planted those was several reasons. One was carbon sequestration. Two was biodiversity, because your peak of biodiversity probably is achieved where you've got a mixed age, particularly broadleaf natural woodlands, and these are all planted to a natural local recipe. So the mix of species is what would have been growing here had nature been allowed to have its way. We also have ponds as well, if you ever want to take a walk down. It is really just lovely on a day like this. So we've got 75 acres, they're all in kind of a block because that's the way the grants work. The grants don't allow you to integrate woodland well, they can do that if you want, but you'll lose your subsidies and you won't get any grant. So you've got to have them in a block, and that's the way the mentality has always been up till now. You're either a forester or you're a farmer, but you can't be both. But it is changing, but slowly. So what we'd like to do in the future is integrate the woodlands much more with the grazing and silage areas. So there's biodiversity, carbon sequestration, and amenity, of course. Amenity is a big thing for us, and it gives our customers an opportunity to go for a walk, should they desire to do so. Not many do. And finally, of course, there's the timber, because these woodlands, some of them are now almost 20-year-old, and particularly the ash are about 10 metres high and are needing thinning, because we had to plant them at 2.5 metre spacings, because that was the recipe for the forestry grant schemes. So we have to go in and thin them over the next 5 years or so. And that'll give us progressively a wood harvest, which we can either sell as for firewood or burn in a biomass boiler on the farm here. All the cottages have got their own boilers, stoves with boilers as well. So we try to provide fuel for all the guys that are living and working on the farm. Right, so that's the environmental side, but that's a sort of high value environmental side, and you know, it is really lovely when we go for a walk down here on a summer's evening.
That's tonight then.
With a bottle of wine, and well, that's after I get the second lot of sheep sorted, and you know, you've got the dragonflies and damselflies and swallows, and it's just, you know, beautiful. Anyway. This is the other side of the equation, because we've sacrificed, agriculturally speaking, 10 acres, 10% of the farm to high biodiversity. We are organic, and we've been organic for 20 years, so there is quite a bit of biodiversity anyway, all natural stuff. Those woodlands there, there's a strip of surrounding a steep bankings down into a burn, and there, that's some semi-natural ancient woodland. That's been there for forever. And then we've got some bits of conifers that were planted 50 years ago, which we're now felling. So, as I say, we've got timber, and we hope that we might be able to put in a biomass boiler to give us hot water at Kimigalloway next year. So, you know, we are trying to do our best. This is was silage at the beginning of the summer. It's been grazed twice with the cows. It's not something I'm particularly proud of, just like here, because something I'm going to show you, but it's kind of gone, washed off. What we had was we used to spend a lot of time running around the farm with a sprayer through the summer, spraying the docks and the thistles and the nettles, you know, great entertainment. And we haven't done that, we haven't sprayed docks for 20 years now, and really haven't got any worse. And what is helping us a great deal is something called, well, I don't even know what it's called, it's a dark green beetle, and it and its larvae seem to eat only dock leaf. It's quite amazing. And we'll go into, particularly in our silage fields where you get the young docks coming up, this year and last year particularly, they have just devastated them, to the point that I'm just a bit concerned, because these are deep-rooted perennials that are bringing up lots of nutrient from the lower regions, and adding to the quality of the grazing and the silage, aren't they? As farmers, we used to hate them, but now I've kind of changed my mind a little bit. But anyway, so nature, this is the funny thing, you know, we've been doing this I've been doing this ecological farming for 20 years now, and the first 10 years was a real struggle. It was. I mean, the number of times we've said, that's it, we're out of here, this is just not working, because it is difficult. You've got to change your whole farming system. You're trying to break the cycles of parasites and diseases, and it involves a lot of changes, a whole change of attitude. And approach, and it's not just a case of saying, well, what's the organic alternative to that thing that we're spraying before or drenching with before. You have to manage these things. So it's a management-based system. So you're managing things so that you don't get the problems in the first place, which is what the health service should be all about, really.
Absolutely.
And it works eventually, but it isn't easy. It isn't easy. I mean, we've been doing it for 20 years, and the first 10 years I said struggle. We hung in there because I'd always to pay some money back to the government, because they gave us money. They gave us money, extra money to be organic. But for every pound they gave us to be organic, they took away £2 of our production subsidies because we were being overcompensated. So that's
Riles.
Especially as all my family neighbours think we were getting extra, which we were, but it was an extra. But so they were taking away more than they were giving. So that was the government support for ecological farming. And who knows, things might change. Michael Gove is saying that it's all going to be about delivery of public benefits and biodiversity and all these kind of things, which is always amuses me because we heard it all before 20 years ago, and nothing changed. And we've got systems set up in Scotland and the UK to pay farmers for the area of land that they've got, basically. Okay, different crops get different levels of support, but they can't even get that right. So how are they going to get biodiversity and diffuse pollution and greenhouse gas emissions and all that public benefits? I don't know. So, but it's Michael Gove, so.
Bless him.
I'm sure he means well.
Apart from Brexit.
Well.
We're not
You
doing
know
it.
that. That's the Brexit, the B word. Okay, so that's about. So what we found, again, the story that is trotted out, and I believed, and I trotted it out myself because I was a consultant for 10 years before I came home, is that if you're going to do anything environmental, you have to have a profitable farm first, right? That's the mantra. But what we found is that once we got these ecological systems working, and these basically it's about harnessing the power of nature to help you farm, so to get the outcomes we want, but by using natural systems. So we've opened the gate and the cars are rushing into the house. It's been a good day at Coomer Galloway. I mean, it's not brilliant. Any grassland specialist would look at this and think it was horrified. There was all the weeds that are growing in this grass, but this is the stuff here. This is very key to us. This is a good example, clover, and since we've been enhancing the clovers in the pastures over the last 20 years. Our production has been growing, and they are harnessing a lot of the nitrogen out of the atmosphere and feeding the grasslands. We've got this biome that is down there. You know, biomes are big things now, and we were at a cheese event just last week, 10 days ago, where they're looking at the biome in the soil, the biome in the cows, the biome in the cheeses, all these biomes and biomes inside us, and how all these things feed into each other, and it's mind-blowing. And what's happened, even in the last 5 years, the technology has moved to the point where they can identify a lot of these bacteria now. So when 25 years ago we thought we knew 10% of what was in the soil in terms of the biome, bacteria and fungi and all that, now they think it's maybe 5%. That's with all the technological development. So we now recognise that we don't know a lot. We know a lot less than we thought we did then, and we know a lot now. So the biome is a huge complex, but it's also, you have an interaction. Sure, there's competition going on, but there's also a huge amount of symbiosis as well. So you've got bacteria and fungi that are working in conjunction with the roots of the plants and releasing nutrients out of the soil, out of the rock, and what was considered to be unavailable nutrients because they weren't soluble, actually can be made soluble through the actions of these at the nano level, I'm told. So that's why, because you know, it used to be the good old days when we put the fertilizer on, you'd miss a strip in the field and it would be yellow, the rest would be green. Okay, maybe it isn't dark green, but it's certainly not yellow. It looks a bit yellow in the sun, but that's reflection. So you look that way, it's green. And so that's, I think, and we see the productivity going up. We see our yields of grass increasing, and it's a combination of the clovers, the fact that we're not poisoning the soil with soluble fertilizers and the sprays that we used to spray all over the place. We're allowing these deep-rooted perennials. They are good because they bring up a lot of nutrients, a lot of minerals, and they add a lot of fibre to the diet. When you see I see our neighbours cutting the grass 4 or 5 times a year to make it into very high quality silage, and then they've got to buy in masses of straw to add to it in a big diet feeder because it's got no fibre in it. And you're thinking, well, you know, we've got all this stuff naturally here. But that's moving. So the biodiversity, yes, the biodiversity is it's there, and nature is helping us. So we actually found that the last 5 years has been quite profitable, even though we don't maybe, we're almost producing as much as we used to do, you know, with the fertilizers. So it's quite remarkable if you hang in there. Not easy. The health service.
Before us being organic and we were thinking of converting, we went to see Loch Arthur, and I think most people are local know about Loch Arthur. And they said to us then, you know, it'll take you to it. Well, it took them 10 years to get the hang of it, and we thought, 10 years? No. But that's what we found as well, we learned how to cope with it, and the soil recovered.
It kind of seems it's got so many parallels. You know how people are saying how your gut health in humans is so important, and that, you know, if you just blast yourself with antibiotics, you basically kill off all the good stuff. So basically, a lot of people don't really have a very good balance of bacteria and things in their gut, and really, particularly in the Western world, we eat a very narrow range of food products, and so the more variety of food that you can eat, the healthier your gut is. And, you know, so instead of having to, and if we eat, and you know, roughage comes into all of that as well, but they're saying it actually is important not just for our digestion, but our overall well-being and
immunity.
And it's kind of fascinating.
So the cows and the
biome seems very similar to human gut health.
We do a bit of reseeding on the farm, so I'm not changing the subject at all. And we do reseed areas, patches, so it's a sort of like a patchwork in the fields, and you'll see there's some areas, and the cows undoubtedly love them better because they're a tetraploid ryegrasses that are very high sugar and very sweet. And the clovers are there. There's red and white cultivated clovers, whereas these are sort of wild white, so they've been there forever. So they which are more maybe not more nutritious, but they are certainly more palatable. And then they grow and graze the rest, you know. And so they've got this mix. And I think I do, you know, the more you see these things in practice, the more you think, well, okay, that stuff is not as productive. It doesn't seem to be as productive, but maybe what they're getting out of that balance is far more better for their well-being, their whole well-being. And this was something that came through at that cheese conference. Was, I mean, they're going to the point now where rather than spraying the surfaces with anti-bac, you know, anti-bac.
We're talking about in the dairy here as opposed to
in the hospitals. In the hospital, they're now having to think about actually spraying them with bacterial, benign bacteria. So they're cultivating benign bacteria and actually putting them out on the tables and the worktops and on the floors, because the battle with MRSA and C. difficile, they're losing them in some hospitals, and the only way they've found that is actually working now is to actually, I could say actually, there's a guy who was there giving us a talk on this, and they're putting bacterial cultures down on onto the work.
Friendly
Be-
bacteria.
Exactly,
Yeah.
harmless bacteria,
Yeah.
maybe even beneficial, who knows,
Yes,
but they're not pathogens, and they're keeping the pathogens out.
yeah.
And that's, we've a tremendous story about the cheese when we started going pasteurised, but we'll go there some other time.
Too long.
But it's very much the same thing.
Carbon as well, it keeps more carbon in the ground if
If
you're
you're
cultivating and putting pesticides in, it basically
Killing
no
everything.
carbon.
Yep, yeah, well, the science isn't very good on that, sadly, because we think, well, our soils are healthier and they've got more carbon stored in them, we should be getting the credit for all this carbon we're storing in our soils, but we don't. That's always, science isn't strong enough. Forestry, yep, definitely the science is there to say that and we have sold some of the carbon credits and some of the woodlands to raise some cash. We're tenants
Sold them
here,
to
by the way.
Pink Floyd.
Pink Floyd. Pink Floyd. Yeah, they didn't even come and do a gig here for nothing. Has anybody heard of Pink Floyd? Anyway, doesn't. It was what was the CD they were releasing at the time? It was
Echoes.
Echoes, yeah, that's right. So biodiversity. So we are building biodiversity. We are reducing our diffuse pollution because we're not putting on chemical sprays. We are increasing the productivity of our farm through capturing natural processes, and it's making us profitable not because our output's going up greatly, but because our costs are dropping away dramatically. And that makes us very unpopular with the industry, the supply industry. The supply industry make a lot of money out of farming, and they see organic and ecological farming as a threat. Understandably, I mean, I would be the same if I was in their shoes. So they have a go at us from time to time. Anything else? We also, instead of slurry, we used to put on raw slurry onto these fields. This is the best. After we cut silage, we put raw slurry on the fields. We used to. We sprayed it on with a big tanker on the back of the tractor, and a big tanker, and it sprayed the stuff all over the place, and there was this horrendous smell. And then the seagulls and crows were all over the fields. Do you recognise the symptoms? We used to do all that. We don't do any of that anymore because we have an anaerobic digester which digests, basically composts, a liquid compost. So it's breaking down the fibres and nutrients, the long chain carbohydrates in the slurry, breaking them down, releasing methane, which we capture and use to burn in an engine. We burn it in an engine to drive an engine to generate electricity or to produce hot water. So for nothing. And it reduces our methane emissions, gives off carbon dioxide instead, but that's a lot less damaging, about 27 times or something less damaging. So in terms of the greenhouse gas. So it's a win-win. You're creating energy, you're saving yourself buying energy, and you're reducing your carbon emissions. But there's even more, because when we spread it in the fields, instead of splashing it around all over the place like we used to do, we get our neighbour who's got an umbilical system. An umbilical system is a pipe which runs right across the farm. We can run it out for about a mile, and to the furthest fields, which some of them are almost a mile away, and then they run up and down with a tractor. So it's just a tractor with a beam on the back of it with drop down tubes that go onto the ground, and then they just run the compost, the digestate out onto the grass in the sort of trails or tracks, and there's no smell. There's no smell, and there's no crows, and there's no seagulls, because what were the crows and seagulls doing? They weren't eating the slurry, they were eating the worms and the livestock that had come to the surface, because when that raw slurry hit the ground, the bacteria started working on it, and as it soaked into the soil, the bacteria started working on it, and it deoxygenated the soil. So all these air-breathing livestock would come to the surface to get a breath of fresh air, and the crows and seagulls knew this, and they'd be there, and they would eat them. So these worms particularly, and all the other stuff, probably all in their own way, the worms particular were, they're turning over soil, they're drilling holes, they're aerating your soil, they're They're doing a huge amount of good naturally, and we were killing them off. So again, you know, going to the digested instead of the raw slurry has hopefully improved the biodiversity in our soil. Just to give you a very quickly, this field here did have little rocky outcrops in it, with sort of permanent grass on them and probably quite high biodiversity. And because we've taken away 10% of the farm, what we're trying to do is improve the productivity of the other 90%. And so we are doing this patchwork quilt of reseeding and taking out in some of the fields the rocky outcrops to make it easier for us to use them for harvesting silage, because the machinery doesn't like dodging in and out rocky outcrops. So that's a negative in terms of biodiversity perhaps, but a positive obviously for the farming side, and the farming side is what keeps us going, I guess. So yeah, it's a compromise. So that's the sort of environmental